Okay, look, I love debates, yeah? You, debate me, and all that. And I love watching debates. In the right venues, I'll watch people talk about all kinds of mad shit. Are black people genetically inferior? Why not gay people? Why not homo-fascists? Can women love? Do you think discrimination is inherently bad? The KKK brought us toys to debate with black conservatives. And if people are in fact 80% water, why can you not drink yourself when you're thirsty? But I'm aware that this position is contested, and it's especially contested by people on the left. Between those who think there are some ideas that are just too toxic or too self-evidently wrong to even bother arguing against, and others who, in the name of free speech, will argue that everything should always be on the table. I want to steelman both of these positions to see if we can resolve them, so I'll be starting with what I think is a pretty convincing case for the deplatforming side.
I'm not only for truth as truth, objective. There are facts, even ideological values, where you don't debate. I'm even for a progressive...
Although your facts might be different from my facts, but anyway, yeah.
Okay, but we can debate it, I hope, rationally. Wouldn't you agree that a certain amount of dogmatism is not only not bad, but it's a sign of progress? What do I mean by this? Would you like to live in a country where you have to argue against rape? No, I would like to live in a country where the fact that you don't rape is simply, in a good sense, dogmatic. It's a fact. So if anyone argues, in that stupid way, what if women really enjoy it or whatever, you don't even fight him, you just laugh at him.
So there are certain facts that are absolutely
ideological facts. And this is even progress. It's a great sign of progress that, at least superficially in our countries, you don't debate it.
Oh, really? Well, that sounds very anti-free speech to me. You mean people should not have to be prepared at all times to argue the philosophical case against sexual assault?
Sounds like it's coming right out of Stalin's mouth.
A few years ago, a YouTuber and streamer called Destiny would frequently challenge people to argue their case against incest. The most common response he would get was that people were firmly against it, but weren't really able to explain why.
I'm sure you could find a little niche situation where incest is okay, but that doesn't make it okay.
So you agree? Did you just say incest? You can find situations where incest is okay? Do you agree or disagree with that? Because that's what you just said. You just said that you can find...
No, it's not. Don't tell me what I said, Steven. I know what I said.
Okay.
According to Destiny, he did this because he thought it was a good way to gauge whether or not someone had genuinely thought about their positions, or if they're just willing to believe things that they can't back up. So this is effectively the counter-position to Zizek's. The idea that anything and everything should always be up for discussion, and it isn't exclusive to online debaters. It also appears to be the position of Noam Chomsky.
I don't think the way to deal with neo-fascist groups is to try to shut them up forcefully. You should try to win the argument. It's quite remarkable to see how it works. So take, say, Holocaust denial. In a lot of Europe, Holocaust denial is a crime. In France, there are laws against it. You can't do it. In the United States, it's not a crime. The consequence is that in the United States, Holocaust denial is unknown. There's plenty of it. There's professors, tenured professors at universities who have published books denying the Holocaust. Nobody pays any attention to them. It's ridiculous. Forget about it. It's just crazy business. In France and a lot of Europe, it's all over the front pages.
So this is a much more permissive idea of public debate, one that led to a mixed response for Chomsky, who recently found himself aligning with J.K. Rowling after they signed a letter which warned about the restriction of debate in contemporary society. It's no wonder Chomsky is often held up by right-wingers who seem to think that his position on free speech and debate is aligned with theirs. But is it? I've seen Chomsky argue with lots of people. He's argued with 9/11 truthers, conservatives, French people, wankers. But for someone who always insists on the importance of winning the argument, I don't think I've ever seen him really engaging with, say, the far right. Even in his old age, he was willing to debate with these internet personalities, but where was his Richard Spencer debate? Or where was his debate with someone like Charles Murray? I mean, there must be some demand for that kind of shit. And to get an answer to that, maybe we should look at what happened when he was asked by an audience member about his opinion on race and IQ.
Last night I saw this Time magazine with the front cover regarding that IQ book that you had mentioned, and I was just appalled by it.
No,
because I thought if I
racism.
was
Yeah.
a black man in this country.
You know, these things are such transparent ideological weapons that you shouldn't even bother arguing about them. We should just understand them transparently for what they are.
Well, and the funny thing is, I wasn't even looking for any kind of hypocrisy when I first watched this clip. Chomsky has a reputation for giving very short and very effective rebuttals to bad ideas, so when I saw a video entitled Noam Chomsky, Race and IQ, I was expecting something like that. Instead, what I got was, it's blatantly racist and you shouldn't bother trying to argue with it. And this isn't a one-off statement. In the early 90s, Chomsky famously defended the free speech rights of Robert Faurisson after he was prosecuted under the Gayso Act, a French law that prohibits Holocaust denial. What isn't so famous about this affair was Chomsky's position on debating with Holocaust deniers.
I am absolutely certain that I've taken far more extreme positions on people who deny the Holocaust than you have. For example, you go back to my earliest articles and you will find that I say that even to enter into the arena of debate on the question of whether the Nazis carried out such atrocities is already to lose one's humanity. So I don't even think you ought to discuss the issue if you want to know my opinion. But if anybody wants to refute Faurisson, there's certainly no difficulty in doing so.
So Chomsky might be against legal prohibition from the government, but morally he also believes that the mere act of debating with a Holocaust denier is to lose one's humanity. And okay, I kind of agree. After all, if someone doesn't have an argument against incest or race realism, that doesn't automatically make the incest advocate or the race realist correct. But I don't think Chomsky is necessarily being a hypocrite here. Nor do I think his position is completely incompatible with Zizek's. Could it not be the case that there are some venues where all things are up for discussion and then others where dogma and limitations are acceptable? Like, if you're going to turn up to an incest debate, you should probably be expected to have some arguments, but at the same time, that lack of argument is hardly something you're going to hold against, say, a random person on the street. Tempting image though it is. When it comes to fascists, you can make a case for the de-radicalizing effects of online debates, but I want to argue that the effects of doing something like this in the mainstream are very different. And I'm going to show you how, in the right circumstances, even the worst debaters can still benefit from being platformed. With that, let's look at Nick Griffin. Nick Griffin is a British fascist who came to prominence in the mid-2000s. And when I say fascist, I don't mean in the sense of Hitler drank water, you drink water, therefore you must be a fascist kind of way. Fuck's sake. When I call Nick Griffin a fascist, what I mean is the BNP that he led for 15 years was only one step removed from the National Front, which was founded by an ex-member of the British Union of Fascists. He wants the UK to become a mono-ethnic state. He told a police officer that his political ideology could be summed up as the 14 words. And he's a Holocaust denier who wrote a book about how Jews and cultural Marxists were using the media to brainwash British people into accepting multiculturalism and homosexuality. So basically he leans further to the right than someone who's just had their right leg blown off. And in 2009, the party made headlines after winning 2 seats in the European Parliament elections. Later that year, the BBC decided to host Nick Griffin on the panel show Question Time. This was a decision that sparked a good deal of controversy, with cries of irresponsible platforming on one side and appeals to freedom of speech on the other. For the free speech side, this was a very easy argument to make because even by the standards of fascists, Nick Griffin was a terrible candidate. He's morbidly uncharismatic, he's not charming, he's not funny, he looks weird, and although he did try his hand at dog whistling, it was ultimately a lost cause. He had been a member of the National Front since he was 14, and any attempt he made to disguise his love for fascism was a complete failure. So the free speech argument was simple. If he's so terrible, all the more reason to let him on. Sure, he wants to build a fascist ethno-state, but that doesn't mean he can't participate in democracy, right? Just get him up there and make him look like a complete twat. The decision to have him on went ahead, and sure enough, it was a disaster. The day after, Nick Griffin immediately filed a complaint against the BBC for hosting him in ethnically cleansed London, he means cleansed of white people, where he described the panel and the audience as a lynch mob that had the explicit aim of making him look stupid. Which, true enough, they did, mostly by letting him speak.
I shared a platform with David Duke, who was once a leader of a Ku Klux Klan, always a totally non-violent one, incidentally.
My ancestors wouldn't get, slaughtered in the concentration camps. But here sits a man who says that that's a myth, just like a flat world was a myth. How could you say that? How could you?
Can I answer those 3 points very briefly? Firstly, to that one, I cannot explain why I used to say those things. I can't tell you. No.
The immigration invasion, an act of deliberate, calculated genocide against our ancient race and nation. So successive governments are committing genocide against their own people. Is that your theory?
I'm afraid that's the case. I've said that a lot of people find the sight of two grown men kissing in public really creepy. I understand homosexuals don't understand that, but that's how a lot of us feel. A lot of Christians feel that way, Muslims, all sorts of people. I don't know why, it's just the way it is.
If you haven't watched this episode, I definitely would recommend it. Griffin got f***ed harder than Jeremy Clarkson's car exhaust, and this spectacle is still lauded today by people who oppose deplatforming. The argument is essentially that you should platform people like Nick Griffin because their ideas are so bad that they'll end up defeating themselves. Give them a platform, and watch as they turn that platform into their own tomb. Even as recently as last year, the episode was referenced in a Daily Express article which argued that Griffin's appearance on Question Time was the worst thing that ever happened to the party. And this is the sentiment I've been hearing for the best part of 10 years. It was platforming that destroyed the BNP. But was it? The BNP are completely irrelevant now, but when this downfall started is still a little bit unclear. Their Wikipedia dates their decline from 2014, which is 5 years after Griffin's appearance, but there was evidence of this beforehand. For example, in 2010, they started losing members after their leaders were accused of financial corruption. The Question Time episode was the biggest event for the BNP. It was seen by nearly 8 million people and extensively reported on afterwards, but I'm a bit skeptical of the idea that this is the thing that damaged the party. Mostly because it's false. In the 2005 general election, the BNP won just under 200,000 votes. By 2010, just a few months after the Question Time episode, they won over 500,000, making it the most successful election result for a fascist party in British history. A YouGov poll that was conducted just a few hours after the show aired found that voting intention for the BNP had actually increased by 1%. More worryingly, over a fifth of the people polled said that they would or might consider voting for the BNP in a future election. The poll also asked people to give their view on the BNP's aim to speak up for the interests of Indigenous white British people, which successive governments have done far too little to protect. And 43% of people said the BNP has a point. Even the BNP website claimed that the BBC appearance gave them the biggest recruitment night in the party's history, with 3,000 people asking to join. I would take that last statistic with a pinch of salt, but it's pretty clear that this did not damage the party. Instead, despite being one of the worst public appearances imaginable, it could have even helped them. But how? One of the first things I was ever told about competitive debating was that making the best arguments wasn't really the thing that mattered. What was much more important was being able to sell your arguments. And whether they're on the left or the right, every big debater that you watch is aware of this. Sometimes they'll even admit it.
And the third reason to discuss an issue with somebody on the left is in a situation like with peers, which is there's an audience, and if there is an audience and the person's closed-minded, then your job is to beat them bloody. Your job is to take them down and humiliate them in front of as many people as humanly possible.
Now, of course, that doesn't mean the arguments don't matter. If you asked Ben Shapiro about that clip, he'd probably say that he's only able to humiliate leftists because his arguments are better. But that really depends on who you're trying to sell your arguments to. So when Nick Griffin found himself on a platform in front of 8 million people, who was he trying to sell his arguments to? Was he really aiming for people who would be swayed by good arguments? No! Okay, no, alright. To any reasonable person, Nick Griffin's performance was a disaster. The problem is, reasonable people are not Nick Griffin's target audience. Griffin is a fascist in the most unambiguous way, and when you're debating a fascist, you need to remember that those people are not playing by the same rules. They don't want rational people. They want cultists. The kind of people who just really want to be told about how the West is being invaded by brown people, or that the Jewish propaganda machine is brainwashing people into accepting the gays or something. And for some people, this could have been the very first time they got to see someone making those points on primetime TV. Hence, the BNP's increased polling that followed. In a discussion with David Duke, an ex-Grand Wizard of the KKK, Griffin was accused of being a sellout for toning down the rhetoric of his party. His response was to argue that his agenda hadn't actually changed, but that he was trying to get his foot in the door of British politics by speaking in more saleable terms.
There's a difference between selling out your ideas and selling your ideas. And the British National Party isn't about selling out its ideas, which are your ideas too, but we are determined now to sell them. And that means basically to use these saleable words, as I say, freedom, security, identity, democracy. Nobody can criticise them. Nobody can come at you and attack you on those ideas. They are saleable. Perhaps one day, once by being rather more subtle, we've got ourselves in a position where we control the British broadcasting media, then perhaps one day the British people might change their mind and say, yes, every last one must go. Perhaps they will one day. But if you hold it out as your sole aim to start with, you're going to get absolutely nowhere. So, instead of talking about racial purity, talk about identity.
Of course, there is a problem with doing this if you already have a decades-long back catalogue of content that contradicts your new image, not least of all, video footage of yourself admitting that your entire plan is to lie about your intentions. And if someone as talentless and uncharismatic as Nick Griffin was able to make something out of that appearance, or at the very least not lose anything, then what would happen if someone just a bit more slick and media savvy found themselves in the same position? Now, hopefully I've made a good case against platforming fascists, but I should stress that this argument is pretty specific to the mainstream. The problem with a program like Question Time is that the panels are made up of politicians, journalists, and mainstream public figures. These are people who probably don't have that much experience interacting with fascists, nor should they be expected to, any more than the average person should be prepared to explain the superior mirage effect to a flat earther. But I do think there should be some venues where these debates should happen, if for no other reason than for free speech, you f***ing woke Nazis. But also because the consequences of debating fascists on YouTube seems to be a little different. It doesn't legitimize them in the same way that sharing a platform with elected officials does. It puts them up against people who are more versed in those kinds of discussions, and the evidence does suggest that they have the potential to de-radicalize audiences. But we can always just let the other side speak for themselves on this, because when you start seeing all these right-wing weirdos, many of whom have a history of debating, making all these excuses for not talking to the debate me bros or the breadtube crowd, it's pretty safe to assume they would not be saying that if they thought these debates were good for them. So, enjoy your debates, you know? Take them for what they are. Debate responsibly. Okay, bye.
Thank both of these gentlemen for coming on here, as they have come up with a truly interesting topic. So thanks again, guys, for being here.
Thank you. I will never debate this guy again who slanders me during the debate. I will never talk to you again, you fucking piece of shit. Goodbye.